In the heart of the city, there was a prestigious law firm known for handling high-profile cases. It was the kind of place where only the best and brightest worked. The lawyers here were powerful, respected, and wealthy. Landing a job at this firm was a dream for many young law students. Among the top lawyers was Mr. Richard Harrison. He had been with the firm for decades. His name carried weight in the legal world. Judges respected him. Clients trusted him. His success was undeniable, but so was his arrogance. Mr. Harrison believed in tradition. He thought only certain people belonged in his firm, those from wealthy families, those who went to elite schools, and those who looked like him. In his mind, success had a type. If you didn't fit that type, you didn't deserve to be there. His colleagues knew about his views, but no one challenged him. He was too powerful. Younger lawyers avoided his bad side. Interns feared working under him. Everyone knew that if Mr. Harrison didn't like you, your career could suffer. One summer, the firm opened its internship program. Many students applied, hoping to get a foot in the door. Among them was a young black law student named Marcus Reed. He had worked hard to get here. His grades were outstanding. His determination was unmatched. When Marcus got the internship offer, he was thrilled. It was his chance to prove himself. He didn't come from wealth or privilege, but he knew he belonged. What he didn't know was that he would be working under Mr. Harrison. And Mr. Harrison had already decided that Marcus didn't belong. Marcus Reed had always dreamed of becoming a lawyer. He grew up in a small apartment with his mother, who worked 2 jobs to support him. Life wasn't easy, but he never let that stop him. He spent his childhood reading books, studying hard, and believing that one day he would make it. When he got accepted into law school, it was a huge achievement. He wasn't from a wealthy family, and he didn't have connections in the legal world. But he had something even more valuable: determination. Law school was tough, but Marcus never backed down from a challenge. He stayed up late studying, asked questions in class, and pushed himself to be the best. His professors noticed his hard work. His classmates respected him. When the opportunity came to intern at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city, Marcus applied without hesitation. He knew that this firm hired the top students, and he was one of them. The day he got the acceptance email, he could hardly believe it. He had done it. He had secured a spot among the best. It was his chance to prove that he belonged in the legal world, no matter where he came from. Walking into the firm on his first day, he felt nervous but excited. The office was massive, filled with expensive furniture and busy lawyers in expensive suits. It was a different world from what he was used to, but he was ready. What he didn't know was that he had been assigned to work under Mr. Richard Harrison, a man who had already decided that Marcus had no place in this firm. From the moment Marcus was assigned to work under Mr. Harrison, the tension was palpable. The senior lawyer barely spared him a glance before tossing a thick case file onto his desk. "Summarize the key arguments," Harrison said, his voice devoid of interest. Marcus nodded and got to work, meticulously analyzing the case law. But it wasn't long before Harrison's scrutiny began. "So, which school did you attend?" Harrison asked casually. "Howard Law, sir." A smirk flickered across Harrison's face. "Ah, not exactly Harvard, is it?" He chuckled under his breath before returning to his own work. Marcus kept his composure, biting back a response. He had heard this tone before, the thinly veiled condescension disguised as casual conversation. An hour later, Marcus handed in his summary, only for Harrison to glance at it briefly before shaking his head. "This is weak," he muttered, marking up the paper with aggressive red ink. "I can already see gaps in your analysis. You need to think like a real lawyer, not a student." Marcus clenched his jaw. He knew the summary was solid, yet Harrison dismissed it outright as if predetermined to find fault. For the rest of the day, the criticism continued. No matter what Marcus did, Harrison nitpicked, his disdain clear. Other interns noticed but remained silent. It was as if Marcus's treatment had been accepted as normal. By the time Marcus left the office that evening, he wasn't angry. He was more determined than ever. If Harrison thought he could break him, he had no idea who he was dealing with. Despite Harrison's relentless belittling, Marcus refused to falter. While the other interns received legal research assignments and case studies, he was given menial tasks, organizing files, proofreading contracts that didn't need editing, and even fetching coffee. At first, he told himself it was just part of the process. But it quickly became clear that Harrison had no intention of giving him meaningful work. "Make sure these documents are in alphabetical order," Harrison instructed one afternoon, barely looking up from his desk. Marcus took the stack, glancing at the legal briefs. "Sir, if you need help with the upcoming case, I'd be happy to research relevant precedents." "Did I ask for your input?" Harrison interrupted coldly. "If you can't handle organizing paperwork, how can I trust you with real legal work?" Marcus swallowed his frustration and got to work. Late nights became his routine. While the other interns went home after their assignments, Marcus stayed behind, double-checking his work and reviewing legal texts on his own. He refused to give Harrison any reason to call him incompetent. Some of the interns noticed. A few shot him apologetic looks, others simply avoided getting too close, not wanting to attract Harrison's ire. But Marcus didn't need their sympathy. He needed results. No matter how much Harrison tried to keep him down, Marcus knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't be in this position forever. After weeks of enduring Harrison's mistreatment, Marcus finally got a chance to prove himself. The senior lawyers were reviewing a complex corporate case, and each intern was assigned to present a brief analysis. It was an opportunity to showcase legal reasoning, something Marcus had been waiting for. He spent days preparing, researching every angle, ensuring his argument was airtight. When his turn came, he stood confidently and began his presentation. But before he could finish his first point, Harrison interrupted. "This is your analysis?" Harrison scoffed, shaking his head. "This is amateur work. You're regurgitating basic arguments without depth." Marcus paused, maintaining his composure. "I considered the precedents in—" "Clearly, you didn't consider them well enough," Harrison cut in. "You're thinking like a student, not a lawyer." The room was silent. The other interns exchanged nervous glances, no one daring to intervene. For the first time, Marcus felt something snap inside him. He had been patient. He had worked harder than anyone, and yet Harrison refused to acknowledge his ability. Taking a steady breath, Marcus met Harrison's gaze. "If you have specific critiques, sir, I'd be happy to address them," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But dismissing my work without explanation doesn't help anyone improve." A flicker of surprise crossed Harrison's face. For a moment he seemed caught off guard, but his smirk quickly returned. Marcus didn't back down. He had made his point, not just to Harrison, but to everyone in the room. He wasn't just an intern trying to survive. He was a future lawyer, and no amount of condescension could change that. Despite the humiliation he faced at the firm, Marcus refused to let it define him. He finished his internship with quiet determination, making sure to absorb everything he could, even from those who doubted him. When he graduated law school, he did so at the top of his class, earning multiple accolades. Unlike some of his peers, he didn't rely on connections to land a job. Instead, he let his talent and work ethic speak for themselves. Marcus joined a well-respected law firm, where he quickly built a reputation as a brilliant and strategic lawyer. He worked harder than anyone, taking on the toughest cases, outmaneuvering seasoned attorneys in court, and proving his worth time and time again. Within a few years, his name became well known in legal circles. He wasn't just another lawyer, he was a rising star. But Marcus had bigger ambitions. Using the experience he had gained, he took a bold step and started his own firm. It wasn't easy at first, but his reputation attracted major clients. High-profile companies, celebrities, and even government officials sought him out for legal counsel. What once seemed like a distant dream had become reality. He was no longer an intern struggling to prove himself. He was a leader, a powerhouse in the legal world. And soon, fate would bring him face to face with the man who once belittled him. Years passed and the legal world evolved. While Marcus's career soared, Mr. Harrison's took a steep decline. His arrogance, once tolerated because of his experience, had become a liability. Younger, more adaptable lawyers surpassed him, and his unwillingness to change with the times left him struggling to stay relevant. Eventually, his prestigious firm faced financial troubles, leading to layoffs. Harrison, once untouchable, found himself among those let go. For the first time in his career, he was desperate. His name no longer carried the weight it once did, and firms weren't eager to hire a lawyer known more for his ego than his skill. Then, he came across a job listing. Marcus's firm was hiring. Harrison barely recognized the name at first, but when he looked closer, realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Marcus had built a powerhouse of a firm, one that was now considered among the best in the city. Swallowing his pride, Harrison applied. He had no other options. A few days later, he received an interview invitation. As he walked into the office, adjusting his tie, he felt a rare sense of unease. He had always been the one in control, the one looking down on others. But now, he was just another candidate, walking into a firm owned by the very man he once belittled. Harrison stepped into the sleek modern office, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. He had been in countless law firms over the years, but this time felt different. His nerves, something he hadn't experienced in decades, gnawed at him as he approached the receptionist. "I'm here for an interview," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. The receptionist gave him a polite nod. "Of course, Mr. Harrison. Right this way." He followed her down a corridor lined with framed newspaper articles, each one highlighting a case won by the firm's founder. Marcus's name was everywhere. When the door to the conference room opened, Harrison's breath hitched. Sitting at the head of the table, exuding quiet confidence, was Marcus. Harrison froze for a fraction of a second, his mind racing. The last time they had spoken, Marcus had been a nervous intern, scrambling under his scrutiny. Now, he was the one in power. Marcus met his gaze with a calm, unreadable expression. "Mr. Harrison, please, have a seat." Harrison swallowed hard and sat down. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "I must say, you've built quite the firm." Marcus nodded. "Thank you, we only hire the best." The words hung in the air. Harrison could hear the weight behind them. He shifted in his seat. I have years of experience handling high-profile cases. I believe I could be an asset to your team." Marcus studied him for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Mr. Harrison, what do you think makes a great lawyer?" Harrison hesitated. He had spent years believing it was pedigree, connections, prestige. But now, sitting across from Marcus, he knew that answer wouldn't be enough. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure what to say. A heavy silence settled between them. Harrison, once so sure of himself, suddenly felt small. He had spent years believing success belonged to men like him, those with the right background, the right connections, the right pedigree. But here he was, sitting across from the very man he had dismissed, now in the position of power he once took for granted. Marcus didn't smirk, didn't revel in the moment. Instead, he remained composed, flipping through Harrison's resume. "You certainly have experience," Marcus said finally. "But tell me, if you were in my position, would you hire yourself?" Harrison hesitated. He had conducted hundreds of interviews in his career, often judging candidates within minutes. But now, faced with that same scrutiny, he realized how fragile his position was. He cleared his throat. I believe my skills still hold value." Marcus nodded slowly, considering his words. Then, after a long pause, he leaned back in his chair. "Here's the thing, Mr. Harrison. When I was an intern, you judged me before I even had the chance to prove myself. You assumed I wasn't capable, not based on my work but on your perception of me." Harrison looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "But," Marcus continued, "I don't believe in making decisions based on personal biases. I believe in fairness." He closed the resume and folded his hands. "So I'll evaluate you based on your qualifications, nothing more, nothing less." Harrison nodded stiffly. He knew there would be no special treatment, no favors, no handouts. He would be judged on merit, just as Marcus had always wanted to be. As he left the office that day, Harrison felt something unfamiliar. Humility. And Marcus? He didn't need revenge. Seeing the lesson finally take root was enough.